lucky. Feel so 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 lucky.
A pair of jeans, a shirt or two. We didn't pack as if we weren't going back. It doesn't matter if it's true. I've got a feeling love will give us what we lack. The world is waiting up. The world is waiting half a step beyond our door. Yeah. And if it's not enough, I wanna see the stuff the world has got in store. I wanna take it all in, I'm falling. The cityscape by night, wanna catch in my photos. Where you go, every corner twice as bright. They'll be my treasures forever. When I can't hold you tight, I'll see the Stockholm lights. The Stockholm lights, the Stockholm lights.
Yeah. So, hello everyone. So what are we going to do today is a little bit of a difference to what I normally do with neoan3. So what we're going to do today is basically creating a little bit of a how should I say that, a single page application wrapper where we have our API included. So as you can see, this is a completely empty directory. So the first thing that I want to do is to basically say, okay, let's get our new app in here. So neoan3 new app, and then I'm going to call this neoan3/tv. So this should run by now. Okay, yep. Okay. So while this is running Composer, and what we can see in our local host is that we now basically have our model user. Let's probably just get rid of that one. Okay. We have our neoan3 instance up and running. And so what I want to get into is to say, like, okay, let's actually not render things server side. Let's instead do it a little bit differently. What do I mean by that? Actually quite simple. I want to introduce a entry point for single page applications, and I'm going to stack the frames to do that a little bit. So the first thing that we probably want to do in here is to basically create a new frame. So I'm going to say, okay, neoan3 new frame. I'm going to call it view app. Yeah. Okay. So that will be basically how my frame would look like. And in order to basically use that frame, so what we have right now here is that the demo component is using the demo frame, and I'm going to create a just a little check here, neoan3 new component. I'm going to call it home. I'm going to say that is a route component, and I do want to create a view, and I want to use a frame, and the frame is going to be view app. And I don't have any kind of template, so I probably want to rewrite this a little bit. So there are two things that I want to do right now. So the first thing that I want to do is like, okay, did that work? Let's go to home and we can see, okay, the home route exists. Hi, Boar Banana. What we also want to do is to basically say, okay, so let's have a look at how this home is. Like an old lady's computer. Yeah, that's the idea. That's the idea. When I look like how this is basically rendered, right? So as you can see now, this extends the Unicore, and the Unicore is something that creates a singleton. And what we want to do though is a couple of things. We want to create this Vue app as static as possible. Do I always use PHP? No, actually, as a matter of fact, we will mainly write JavaScript in a second. I want to directly use the Vue app here. So what I'm going to create is a Vue app. And then in here, there's really not that much I want to do other than say, okay, this hook main uses main, and then we have a particular output here, right? Okay, let's quickly see if that still runs. So this should make a difference if we're lucky. Yes, perfect. Okay. Now, here comes the point. What we want to do in our frame is to basically be able to wrap a Vue route, right? So a Vue instance around this this actual output, so we can basically hook in our single page component directly from here, and yet render server-side necessities. So what I mean by that will make sense in a little second. So let's first look at our Vue app a little bit and say, okay, what are we doing here? Absolutely nothing. And that's basically what we want to change. So what we need, right, is we want to overwrite the output function from serve, right? So I'm going to simply say output, and yep, this is simply what I still want to do. And here I'm going to say, okay, I need some kind of logic that would allow me to basically hook in my view, right? My view. And I need to auto-generate how. So there are two ways in Vue, right, that I can work in general. I can basically say, okay, it's a Vue component, and then it's registered globally, or I can basically say I want to use imports, in which case I can work with browser modules. So if I do that, though, I need to somehow kind of make it possible to smartly render that stuff, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create actually two things here. So first is, let's call this app generator. And that's going to be an array. And then I'm going to say a private, so that's going to be some kind of string, or let's call this components. Let's call this components. And we will see what that automates for us in a second. So let's basically do two things here. So first of all, I don't want to go to home, right? So the first thing that I'm going to do in my default PHP is to say, hey, let's change this to home, right? So this will still work, but more importantly, when I visit the root, it will still be exactly here. And then in my home, what I do want to do is I basically want here to be able to simply use stuff, right? So I don't know, like my component, which I cannot type, right? Which of course right now will not work. And that's a little bit the culprit of okay, how could we make that happen? So let's maybe start with creating the Vue instance itself, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new component. I'm simply going to call it app. And that's going to be a custom element. Okay. So why am I doing this is because in my app, I'm basically going to create my Vue instance. So I'm going to say, okay, import Vue from, and I should probably npm install this, but I'm going to say VueJS CDN. What? Oh, why is this so complicated? The developer version, sure, let's just use this for now. Okay. Okay, it bitches a little bit, but it should work. It should work. And then, so I don't know how I'm going to do that, but then I'm basically going to say, okay, app is new Vue, right? And here I need some kind of element I'm going to hook this into. I don't have that yet, but let's just call that app. And then I will need my components. Thank God for documentation. Yeah, components. Okay, now here comes the trick. How do I register component on demand, whether or not I need them, right? And that is basically where we're gonna hook in the power of neoan3 and say, okay, now this, oh, and I know that you're gonna freak out right now, but this is going to be components. And here, we're going to have our imports. Imports. Okay. Now, as you can see, this doesn't really look like valid markup because it isn't. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this whole thing as a template in order to generate what we actually want to generate, depending on dynamically added components. And so let's go back to our Vue app and see how we could possibly do this. So I need in my home controller, right? I basically need to hook this in somehow, but let's maybe start easier and say, okay, in my Vue app, I'm going to overwrite a couple of things, and I'm going to overwrite main, and going to surround it with a section with the ID app, right? And yeah, let's just hack this in for now. Oh man, so many people there today. Hey, I'm Holcomb. And that basically overwrites what we said it will output, right? So what we do now in our home view, so this one will now basically be wrapped around with this skeleton. Now you probably noticed that there's a neon root already in the skeleton that is provided that we could hook a single page application into. But today we're going to do it manually, just to have a better understanding of what's happening. So basically what we want to do then is to say, okay, this include element, and we're going to say app, and then we need to somehow generate this app data, right, which we don't have yet. So let's maybe start here and say, okay, so what could that possibly be? Traverse the array. What could this possibly be? So I'm not sure yet how that looks like, but what I am sure is, okay, so we will have an import string somehow, and we will have a component string somehow. Okay, so far so good. And let's basically start from here and see if that even works so far. So if I reload this, it's not much change, but I should be, oh, there's already something bitching. Does not provide an export name default. Ah, yeah, that is correct. Please tell me that you have a browser thing somewhere. JS browser. It's probably MJS. Yeah, that looks good. That looks good. I'm not sure if that's the right version, but that should be fine. 3rd 2019. Yeah, fair. Will be modern enough for us, right? Will be modern enough for us. Let's get rid of this advertisement. Okay. So far, so good. So now we can see basically that here I have the section ID in there. And okay. And there's my home, and then here's my component. So I'm actually kind of surprised that it's not bitching already. Do I have the Vue installed? I do. And I should have probably, this is unfortunately min.js. Yeah. So as I know Vue, if you just get rid of the min.js, exactly, it's going to give you the nice warnings. That's how they do it, right? That's their system. Is the minified one is basically the production one, and the other one is more of a well, not more of a, is basically the version for developing. So as we can see now, what happened with this markup is, if we actually look at the network and look at what happened here, is that basically now kind of magically we have this cleaned up. I mean, we have no components yet, but as you can see now, it's not a markup error anymore. It's now nice and clean. So far so good. But naturally that would be kind of boring, right? So let's just assume we're building our first, well, basically our first Vue component now, right? So let's say we have something that we're gonna call parent. Right, and that is, we still don't have a template, so that's gonna be simply empty. So in our component list, we now have a parent, and that is basically how we are going to manage this, right? So this is kind of like an export default, and then we're gonna see where we're gonna get from here, right? So name is then parent component. Sure. And then template is template. Right? Sure, why not? Let's just assume that we have here a wonderful test. Beautiful template here. Okay, now, and here comes the trick now. So the first thing that we need to do is to basically say, how do we get that parent is loaded into the global app, because it's going to be basically a first level component. So it's something that we use on home in our case. So we don't have any kind of logic that would be able to do that. So let's basically create it in our frame and say, okay, so we're going to call this add view component name. What the hello? And what we're basically going to do here is to say, okay, so we have the components and the app generator. So I'm going to use one of them as a list, let's say the components, right? I'm going to say, okay, if not an array, name in this components, right? So that's basically just a security that I don't include things twice if I stack them. Then I basically say, okay, add it, right? And say, okay, this components is name. Let's do that. And now we have to think about how our app generator looks like, right? So this app generator, and what did we say? Yeah, we said it has an import. So imports. Okay. Now this is something that we need to clean up, but for now I'm going to write it like this: import. And then dot name from, and then we need hold on, we know where that is in relation. That's here, component. Yep. Then the name. Let me think. Yep. And then, oops, no. Right. And then name .ce.js. That's basically what we need to then get clean somehow. But okay, so that's the principle of the imports. And the second string we called components. Components. And that is actually, that is just, I have to see that this doesn't bite, so it needs to be like this. And then we simply say name, and this should probably be ops. Don't I have ops? Yeah, ops to keep up case name colon. Actually, let's get, yeah. Yeah, no. Name. Yeah. Yeah. That should work. That should work. Okay. And so that makes a couple of changes necessary here. So our imports now, let's do an implode. Just a new line will do. Actually, yeah, let's make that a new line of this app generator imports. That's correct. And basically that the same counts for this. Hold on, here we need a comma, and here we need a so. Okay. Let's see if I'm right. Let's see if I'm right. Oh, we're not using it. Hold on. We can't even test this yet. So now I say in my home I want to use the parent. Wait, how did I call the parent? Parent component. That's now kind of stupid. We're going to call it parent. Should have called this differently. So here we're going to say, I already forgot how we called that method. Add view component, sure. Here we're going to say, oops, add view component parent. Oh, and just to be sure that this works as intended, we're going to keep it a singleton. Okay, Let's see if it throws any kind of errors. It does already. Yeah, let's see. Let's see what's happening here. So we have our, this is so weird working on one screen. Component parents EJS. What? Unexpected token. Oh, I'm missing. Okay. Easy peasy. What I'm missing here is, of course, I need to kind of do this. Cool. Still not. Import components. Whoops. Yeah, that needs to be components. That needs to be components. Still not. Parent is parent. Unexpected identifier. Yeah, because this should not be a string. Hey, clownboots, congratulations. Congratulations. Clownboots just passed the German exam. Cool beans. Let me switch over so you guys see each other. Oh, there you go. But you're all on Twitch anyway, right? So you see each other. Now I kind of lost track. What is this? Oh yeah, okay. So here, of course, I don't want this. I want this to actually, I don't want this at all, I guess. Just want that one. Oops. And then see if that works. Still, okay, what's the problem here? Oh, I'm missing one after my parent. Okay, so la 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 la. Here I have one. Okay, cool. On an element my component. Yeah, that was to be expected. Because of course what I have instead now, okay, so now it should work. This is now parent. Right? Pum. Cool. Absolutely cool beans. Okay, so what's happening now? The parent, so what you can see now is that on the higher level, right, of what is it, so this I can close now. We'll never need this again. And this I will hopefully also never need again. And from now on, when I basically say, okay, so the first order that I require is something that I have to specify, right? Okay, so what is this route's main component, or the components that I need on this route to be visible? And again, since this is going to be an SPA, that's probably going to be my main app somehow, right? So that's why I called it parent. So it should now be possible. So let's actually, before I say too much, let's try that out. So let's say new component, child component. To basically say, okay, so let's actually first quickly open up the child component and say export default is export default, yeah, just directly a component, right? And say name is child component, and then we say template is div. Actually, let's do this a little bit more interesting and say props is name, names, and that is an array. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. And here we're going to say that is a div, and here in there we have a p, and here we say v4 name in names, and then we say name name. Okay, let's be boring right now. And if that's the case, then we could basically say okay. So in our problem, so here let's create a couple of things, right? Let's create a constant list, and our constant list is going to be an array where we're going to say, okay, name is Sam, name is Hochem, and name is clownboots. Okay, and when we have that list, and let's actually create that quickly. Let's create that quickly, and basically in our template, and of course you always need some form of root component, right? So here we basically say okay. We directly here say child component v4. What are we going to say? Actually, now that I see it, this will potentially not work. I need to call this something. I'm going to make this life easier a little bit for us here and say say names. Okay, fair enough. Okay, and then here say name in names, and stop doing that crap here. Just to stop doing that crap here. Right, and say okay, and then name equals name dot name. Okay, so far so good. Now this will, here comes the actual test, right? So that's so far so good. I mean, other than it's really hard to watch this without indentation. But the interesting point now is like, okay, can I load this just as a browser module? So let's try that. So we're going to say import child component from, and now we're going to say component. We don't even need to do this, right? It should work like this. Child component c.js, right? And then here, make sure that we understand that. So components, and do the same basically here manually, right? And say okay. So this is now not registered with the app. Don't forget that. That's what we're trying to figure out, right? Can we do this? Can we pull this off? And here we're basically going to say, okay, that is my child component, and that is child component. Okay. All right. Let's have a look. And the answer is no. Property method name is not defined in the instance, but referenced during render in child component. Okay. Props name. Pam. Cool. So, yeah. So that works pretty nicely. So what did I do? Well, I basically passed in the, this list, and basically gave it in here to my child component, and basically now I can pass in the props, and I can simply that looks pretty native, right? How it works pretty native, and that is nice. So what, of course, I really wanted to do in reality is I want to create a little bit of a API functionality, right? So let's say neoan3, new component. Let's call it name list. A little bit stupid today, but what the hell? That's going to be an API endpoint. It's going to use, okay. So I would probably want to use something that has some kind of API connectivity normally for this. Yeah. I'm going to use now a different one. We haven't set up any API, but that's fine. And we don't, in that case, we don't need the frames to extend other frames, because we kind of want to keep that separated, right? So in our component, what would you just call it? Name list. Yep. Let's just make something stupid here and say, okay, what we're going to do in our parent, this shebang here, that's actually what I'm simply going to return, right? I just want to prove that we can return something from the API. So I don't know, let's give this an ID of 1 and just pretend that that's from some kind of database, right? And name is Sam. And then we're basically going to say, okay, here we have weekday hangouts, and here we have okie dokie, and that's all we want for now. And in our parent, we also want to have some kind of API wrapper. That is something that we definitely want to have. So let's create that. I more or less, it doesn't really matter where I create that. But here's what I need, right? I'm going to use, where is it? I'm going to use Axios CDN. Sure. I don't like the Cloudflare one, but that doesn't matter. Let's quickly include that in our frame. We can do that in the, it actually doesn't matter. We can do that also back here. And say this include JS. Bum. That should do. That should do. And then we, oops, I gotta hang out here. Okay, got a couple more minutes time, but I want to get this, see this through so it at least runs. So what we probably also want to do then is to say, okay, how do I get Axios in there, right? Because I would personally like to do a wrapper around this, a little bit of an API wrapper, because it makes more sense. So what I'm going to do, and I can basically paste, where do I want to even do that? Let's do that here. Let's create a simple stupid file where I say JavaScript file, and I'm going to call this API. And here I'm going to say, okay, export default, and you kind of, I do this for multiple reasons. One of that is it really pisses me off that Axios doesn't have a browser module. And I want to kind of use that like pretty nicely. Okay, and then I have a base URL, that's how you write it, and that is going to be API.v1, and we will need a base. I just realized. Okay, let's do it like this. Yeah, let's do it like this. Let's do it like that, and bam. And then the rest is kind of like okay, right? Do I need anything else? Let's do the timeout a little bit higher and say, okay, let's make sure that works. Okay. So far so good. Now I don't have a base, so what I'm going to do, this is a little bit hacky here, but that's okay. So I'm going to directly write to the JS stream. I'm going to say constant base equals, and then I'm going to say base. That should do. Let's quickly see if that works. Okay, looking good so far. Now, the next thing is to basically say if that's the case, then in my... Okay, so again, this should now solve the issue of on a global scale. So I should be able to now say, okay, import API from, and then I say app API, right? Okay, and then here instead of this list, I'm going to say, yeah, that is empty. That is empty, and then here I'm going to say mounted, and then I could simply say API.get, and what did we call it? Name list. And then I can say this names equals result data. Okay. Bam. Very nice. And that's how easy it is, right? So now we basically have, if you look at the network, we're asking the name list now. So if I make any kind of changes to that, then I should be able to basically say, what did we even do this in? So this we never need again. This we kind of never need again. Okay, so we're basically done here, right? The only thing that we're doing now is writing components. So in the name list now, if I hook up a database and make changes here and say, okay, so I also have clownboots in the game. There we go. Right, then I basically have this functionality solved. And yeah, so that's a little kind of like proof of concept. I'm not kind of sure if I put that somewhere on GitHub, but maybe if you're interested, I will. If then write me. If not, then not, I guess. Let me quickly check if there are any Discord questions, because otherwise I would kind of jump off now. But I think we're good. Yeah. Any kind of questions you guys have? Not really. Oh, I actually missed that with the what kind of JavaScript framework for text-based or 2D game. So look into Phaser. Is that what it's called? I think it's called Phaser. Phaser. Is that what it's called? Yeah. So that's kind of cool. Then Pexi is kind of cool. And text-based or 2D game, yeah. So that's relatively simple and has kind of cool physics, right? So Phaser would be something I recommend. Let's maybe go into that a little bit. Then GreenSock, yeah. So that's a pure physics engine that you might want to look into, right? The kind of cool stuff that you can do with that. And there's a, oh, look at that, they have particle models too. Awesome. And then there is, what's it called? Pexi.js or Pixie.js. Pixie.js, yep. There's like that stuff where you basically see, yeah, those are basically, let's look at the gallery. Let's close that because that's probably all going to kill me. So they have really cool stuff that they do with that, if that's still up and running. Wow. Not the lightest thing, I guess. Holy moly. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to wait for that. Yeah, thank you very much. Oh my God. Damn it, it literally froze my computer. Well, I guess we're going to see it through now, huh? Yeah, frozen. Frozen. Wonderful. Wonderful. I'm kind of interested. Can you write something so I see whether or not I'm still streaming? Because I cannot move my mouse, nothing. Okay. Let's close this immediately. I have no idea what they built, but I want to get rid of it. Okay. Woo. And the terminal kicked on. That's a good sign. Okay, well, anyway, I guess those are the options, right? Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I see you guys the next time around, I guess.